How do I switch myself off?
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy.
I don't know if anyone.
There was no music. There was nothing. It was the cold starts. Where are you?
I know it's because we've been in the regions. I am in the regions, and the only place that I found is this broom cupboard in which to broadcast from. But living the dream, as Barry Jones once said.
I'm sure.
That's a story for Barry Jones to tell at another time. So, welcome everybody to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology change, innovation. This week, we are going to kind of do a bit of a preview show on the London Market Claims event coming up in 2-3 weeks' time. We are also going to have a bit of a report from you, Ben, about what's going on in the regions. But first, let's start with the news. And normally, ding, ding, there we are. There's the bell. It's production values. That's what everyone tunes in for, isn't it? So let me start, Ben. So the first bit of news is that I actually survived the Tour d'Insurtech bike ride. So if you remember last week, I was particularly nervous about doing a 40-mile ride around Bath, organised by Genesis, and a big shout out to them. Actually, they did a great job. It was evident that they were very proud of the city of Bath and put on a really good cycle ride. That was great. And I managed to get round. So
great.
So that was good. Your camera's gone off, Ben.
You can hear me though.
I can hear you. Oh no, now you've gone. Typical. A time when I don't have all my gadgets, and now I don't have Ben. It's going to be a disaster, this show. I can see it now. Let me see if I'm getting back in again. Anyway, while we're waiting for Ben to come on, it was a really good ride around Bath. There was loads of InsurTech people in there. And as I say, put on a really good event. We're going to get into more London market focused issues once we have Ben back, which we do.
I'm here. Sorry.
Just unplug yourself. So I was just saying it was a well-organised event, Ben. I managed to get round, and yeah, it was good.
It was good. Yeah, that pro cyclist there with riding with no hands looked good. That wasn't you, was it?
No. I can do no hands though, and I did do no hands.
Yes, we know.
Yeah. There we go. Look at
Did you beat Phil?
Yeah, but Phil. Oh my God, Phil had a disaster of a day. So his tire exploded in the car on the way to get there. That was the start of his ride, and then it got worse as the day went on. But anyway, he survived the whole thing. Not the best day for Phil, but yeah, pretty good day for me. So there we go.
Send in my commiserations. Right.
Yeah, there we are. Right, let's get back into the London market stuff. So last week we previewed the Monte Carlo, and then I saw this, Ben, which is on social media. You might not be able to read that, but this is a post that was put on by the insurer, and it says, perfect day for the insurer's CEO lunch as part of this year's reinsurance month. So part of that. And then the post by Sharon Brown is, let's hope 2024's CEO lunch is a little more diverse, because as you can see there, the picture is all of men of a certain color, of a certain age. And yeah, it's not a great look, is it? But I mean, it's fact, isn't it? These people are the CEOs of these big reinsurers. So it's a bit of a dilemma for the insurer. Do you post the picture? Do you not? Do you engage in the debate? What do you do?
No, and I think the insurer just says it's got a very diverse team itself, and I know them very well. I certainly wouldn't lay it at the foot of insurer, and I think that's what some of the posters have said. But I do think visual, how things look, the optics as they call it nowadays, is very important, and that was not great. And I think that I suppose the first point is that, thankfully people are becoming more conscious about this, but we have still got a very male dominated industry at the CEO level, and I think that is true in quite a lot of other industries as well, of course. But yes, a whole table of CEOs. I think there was one woman there in the end of the table. Doesn't look great, and the trouble is it contradicts a lot of things that you see elsewhere. So Lloyd says that now there are X percentage of women in the boardroom and things like that, but that's kind of visually people will say, and we're trying to recruit people into the industry. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think we get quite a lot of this as well when we do our underwriters and brokers reports, which is still very male dominated, as you know, and that is the fact of the matter. And people will endlessly argue about this, but there still should. I mean, our point is that performance-wise, a more diverse industry is better. It performs better. There are stats to prove that, in all sorts of other sectors. And you're missing out on 50% of the talent if you're not focusing on women. That's before we get into any other minority groups or even non-minority groups. So I think it's important. It's a shame, but it probably should be called out each time. I've been called out as well. I mean, I have put things together unthinkingly where there were quite a lot of men on it, and women have said, "Great idea, but doesn't look very diverse." And of course, we fixed it.
Yeah. And in transparency as well, we have as well our events. Sometimes you look at the panel and go, "Oh yes, okay, I see it now." It's a panel of very similar looking people. One of the challenges for us is that the fact of the matter is that there aren't as many senior women leaders in the industry, and so you can only fish and pull. I mean, we've made a concerted effort to try and balance that. Certainly, London market claims have almost got a 50-50 gender balance, which is which is good, but it's tough. But I think things are changing, so that's good. There are more senior women that we talk to and want to be involved in.
I
agree.
Things. And then that was reinsurance as well, so I think that may be even more male dominated. It's quite a traditional part of the market and slower to change.
Anyway, so there's a bit of news there. It's a bit of social media chat. Okay, let's talk now, Ben, about your trip to the regions. So we've got regional news from the regions. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in association with Bieber, you are doing kind of a road show, very much like Radio 1 did in the 1980s and early 90s.
It's a bit like that.
Where you take a massive truck to a seaside town and entertain them. Is that right?
Well, it's like sort of like that, but it's called Tour of the Regions, and there are two types of event that they have. One is either a sort of what they call a knowledge forum, where they present a lot of things about what's happening at the moment in the industry and what Bieber is doing, and they have various presenters. And then another, which is a kind of shorter one, which is more of a sort of quicker thing without all the kind of knowledge stuff. So the first one yesterday was in the Anglia region. It was held at the rather beautiful and interesting venue of the Imperial War Museum at Duxford in Cambridge. So we were treated to a little tour of the museum, and there were Messerschmitts, because there's an air show on this weekend, Messerschmitts and Spitfires flying outside and all sorts. So it's very I'd highly recommend it as a venue. It was really good. And they had asked General Lord Dannatt, who was head of the British Armed Forces for a long time and involved in all sorts of different wars and conflicts of the past 40, 50 years. So he did a really interesting talk. I did a talk about our survey and the insurance trends, which we showed some regional data, so that was interesting. People were kind of responding to that, and we talked about the fact that insurance services going up a bit, which is good because it was pretty low before. And we had all sorts of very, I think, very interesting pieces from Bieber, from Graham Trudgill, who's the new CEO, and David Sparks, who is the head of regulation there, both talking about some really important issues, which we're going to talk about in a second, like consumer duty, the big issues around that Michael Gove has kind of sent out a kind of exocet to the industry around commissions, that he's going to ban commissions if it doesn't sort its house out, which is related to sorry?
The Grenfell.
To Grenfell, and to the way that property insurance all works, and the kind of slightly murky world that has been in some areas, and also the FCA has done a major investigation into this. So these are very big issues that are going to challenge everybody, and they will come into the London market too, because they are about significant changes around regulation, and rather the viewpoint of the regulator and the government. So Gove is on the warpath on this one. But when you listen to all of this together, one, you realise there's a big challenge for brokers, and two, there is a hell of a lot going on and a lot to deal with, both in terms of workload and really, I suppose, pulling up the industry into something that is a much more transparent, kind of modern business, and yet also at the same time trying to show how useful it is and what its purpose and proposition is. So it was really good, and I'm doing 7 or 8 more. So we're going to all of the kind of key areas, so including Scotland, Northern Ireland. So what I'll do is I'll report back as we go through on this, just to give a flavour of what we're getting out from the regions, because that's the other point, is listening to the grassroots on all of this. And interestingly, there's quite a few what I'd call kind of suppliers like me, people who work as third parties advising or helping. So there's banks there who provide credit, so they've got an interesting angle. There's people who are doing kind of regulatory software, but also advising, consulting on how business could improve. So it's a really nice joined up bunch of sessions, really, where you get to see a lot in a short time. So it's good. It's really good. Bim's done a great job.
So we'll carry on. We'll have a regular feedback from you, Ben. Do you want to give us? You touched on consumer duty, and quite often when we're thinking about this in the context of the London market, consumer duty goes, oh well, that's nothing really to do with us. But I think you've got a different take on that.
Yeah. So I wanted to draw attention to this, which is the Bieber guide to consumer duty, which has come out in July. And it's very good. It's only a short document. It's worth a read, and it just tries to at least start to unravel and clarify some of the points in this. And one of the things about consumer duty is the language itself is to some extent quite misleading potentially for our P&C, wholesale, large commercial businesses. And I think that's really important, because it sounds as if it's just for personal lines, which it isn't. So really a kind of few points I've just wanted to draw out of this, and this is David Sparks, again, who I mentioned earlier on, who's the head of regulation, has been the kind of mover behind this, and he's extremely good, and has clarified quite a few points. So I think it is first point that's made in here by Bieber, which is an interpretation from what has been said, is that the duty regulation is not about just polishing up what you currently do and making sure you're doing it right, which is what a lot of regulation is about. It's actually saying it needs to be a step up on what organizations are already doing. So this is a very big ask from the regulator of the insurance business. And so just verifying existing procedures and processes is not enough. The consumer duty applies to all personal lines business and a lot, they call a lot, which is not very clearly defined, of the commercial lines business. And really, it does apply to fairly big businesses and fairly big contracts. Not the stuff, a lot of the stuff that's done in London. Not a lot of the cat stuff will be excluded from this. Reinsurance is excluded. Very large commercial risks contracts on, your oil rigs and your airplanes and things like that will not be included because they're deemed to be a different type of contract where, and I would completely agree with this, where there are very sophisticated purchasers who can look after themselves, but you don't go too far down from that. And given what the mix of business is now in London will be affected by this quite significantly because you can have businesses up to 50 million turnover and things like that. So they're really quite quite a substantial amount of what would be called chunky sort of business would be included in this. And BIBA says that the rule of thumb really is probably to say that everything is included, is in scope for consumer duty, unless it has been specifically excluded. And there are some specific exclusions that are mentioned in here. And insurers will have to work with their legal advisors and others to make sure that they're on the right side of this if they're going to pick and choose, or they're going to just say, look, this is a wash, we will just do this across the whole business. And from what I'm hearing, that's what players who are on this now are doing. They're saying we're going to just basically apply this everywhere because it's easier, and we might as well. And the other reason for that, I think, is that even when you get into some of the bigger risks, so property, for example, they're saying that they will pick out property risks, even when they're very large sometimes, because of the potential for consumer kind of damage or whatever sort, or negatives for the outcomes for consumers. So you could easily be caught out if you said, oh, let's just exclude all that bigger stuff on a value basis or a class basis. So that's kind of where it is. I think the other things to think about, that all regulated firms, no matter where they are in the distribution chain, are caught by the duty. So this is everybody. Doesn't matter what you do, as long as if you're in that distribution chain regulated, then you are included. And really important, the extent to a firm's obligation are determined by the degree to which they are able to determine or materially influence retail customers' outcomes. Now, the word retail there just means customers, I think. I think it's retail in the sense that they're the people who just bought the thing, the companies or the individuals. They just use that term retail because they're defining it as not being a sort of group purchase or a wholesale type thing. In other words, a broker buying some business off another broker as a counterparty. So, but it's that customer outcome which is really central to this whole piece, really, which is, so where there is any possibility, if you like, of material influence, where you and your products or services impact that customer, then this is in scope, and that's pretty big, right? Because when you think about things like delegated and any outsourced type business, so therefore, the other point that's made is firms are responsible for all of this outsourcing to third parties. So any delegated business, cover holder stuff in London would be definitely in scope here. And then when you come to that, you've then got another very important point which is made, which is both the firm and the outsource organization are deemed to, if they're FCA authorized, are deemed to be responsible for monitoring good outcomes among customers. So if you imagine, say, like a delegated claims authority and the claims the insurer itself, both will be responsible for monitoring those outcomes. And I think it's fair to say that at the moment, a lot of that isn't monitored. It just kind of, claims are just paid, happened, don't get paid, happen. So there's no real necessarily that much monitoring going on at the moment. There are audits, of course, which Lloyd's will push through, and I don't think even those are happening at the moment. But anyway, there's a lot of work to do here, I think, and this is being brought in gradually, so it's not a big bang thing. But I've kind of described it as a bit of a tsunami kind of effect. It's starting to lap up on the shores now of these businesses. Some are doing quite a lot of work, and I think others are not. So certainly one of the things that came out yesterday was just how much work brokers have to do now around fair value, which is slightly separate to this, but it's the valuation of property, and that they've valued and done the work properly and then shared out the commission properly, such that someone isn't being fleeced somewhere. That is quite the industry is quite a long way behind, with a backlog of around about 2 years on that stuff. So there's a huge amount of administrative work to be done just to prove that you're doing the right thing with all your commissions and so on and so forth. So there's quite an administrative burden or regulatory burden on businesses.
Yeah.
So it's big, but it's all about these outcomes, and that's going to make a big difference.
Definitely. So I ran a breakfast briefing on Tuesday, which was looking at kind of it was actually a how do you enable a digital operating model, but it quickly got into, well, what are you actually trying to achieve? And a lot of it came to improving customer outcomes. And they, around the table, there was probably 15, 18 of us from different organizations, brokers and underwriters, and they were saying consumer duty had actually been a very good tool for them to try and change the mindset of the organization. So organizations that see the value of improving customer outcomes, because if you do that, generally speaking, you will improve your operating model, you'll find those efficiencies. They're using it proactively. So rather than looking at it going, oh god, not another piece of regulation, they're going, okay, we've got an opportunity here to really change our operations and to put those customer outcomes at the center of what we're trying to achieve. So
it's very important. I remember one of the first conferences that I spoke at of yours, and Nick Sinfield, who came along and spoke alongside me many years ago, must have been 15 or 16 years ago. He made the point then that actually we don't measure outcomes as an industry, and that the most important thing was the outcome. He was talking about claims specifically, and I think he and other people have carried that on, but we have, I think, for a long time we've felt like voices in the wilderness on some of this stuff. But I agree with you. People are now saying to me, particularly, and I had some of this comment yesterday, that they find consumer duty an incredibly helpful thing, because it both articulates what they need to do, and it sets a framework, and it also sets a standard that they have to they'll have to adhere to. So I think it is seen by a lot of people as positive. And remember the idea of this, and I know some people will laugh at this in terms of the regulator, but it is fundamentally about competition. I think the regulator has said that consumer duty, if it works, is going to increase competition, and that's good. That's the fundamental principle of the regulator, is that competition is good for the market, because people will want to do things better. Now, I think we both agree with that and say that is the real strong driver. So I imagine that some are going to get onto this and some are going to be slow and as ever. And those that get onto it, I think, will just both avoid the regulators coming in, and also will actually benefit generally. They'll do better as businesses, because they'll deliver better service and so on. But there is a lot of work to do that's associated with this, and I think the industry is really facing a moment in time when it's got to say, right, the next few years there's got to be a massive amount of hard work and methodical work in which we get this stuff right.
Yeah. Good. So look forward to more of news from the regions, and hopefully we can kind of compile a bit of a narrative about what different regions are either thinking about, common challenges, maybe even areas of best practice.
I'm collecting some of that, so I'll definitely feed that back. So I've agreed that, and I was talking to somebody yesterday who's going to be helping out on that, and we'll get that from all the regions. Yes, so that'll be quite cool. Yeah, some good stuff.
Great. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. I would normally go ding ding and move things on, but I don't have a bell. It's really annoying. Right. So let me play you this, Ben, and you can guess what it is.
Nice.
That's right. The
Daft
self,
Punk vibe to that,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you're right.
wasn't it?
Actually,
Daft Punk.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it was.
that's
Yeah.
it. So somebody was just before we move on and do a bit of a preview of London Market Claims coming up in a couple of weeks. Somebody was telling me that one of the funniest videos on YouTube is the French military band playing Daft Punk to Macron and Trump, and Macron kind of gets it and goes, "Oh my God, they're playing Daft Punk," and Trump is going, "What's going on?" But anyway, that's an aside.
Oh, we'll have to show that on here next week.
Yeah, yeah, I'll dig it out and put it on there. But we are gonna quickly look at London Market Claims as we promised at the top of the show. What we thought we'd do is pick out, I guess, 5 themes that have bubbled to the surface as part of the research and part of the data, and see how it feeds into the data that you've collected, Ben, and we can just talk about them ahead of the event. I'm sure it'll inform them, the discussions that we have. So let me kick things off. So brand. So uh, what I'm hearing in the research that I'm doing, and I think this does annoy claims directors, is that quite often at the conference, say claims is the shop window of our business, and I think in the past that is kind of being talked about, but in reality, actually, when it gets down to the underwriting, it's the underwriting that are doing the deal, and claims are still in the back office function. I get the sense that actually, with the stuff that we've just been talking about, consumer duty, and with the way that businesses are really focusing now on clients and client outcomes, that is becoming more true. I talked to a number of companies even this morning, and they are putting claims front of center of that underwriting process. And also clients are asking, what have your claims teams got in terms of skills and capabilities that if the policy is triggered, we will actually get the service that you're
Yeah.
promising at the point of service.
Yeah.
So
W-
it's really interesting, I think, how that plays into the brands of organizations.
Yeah, so we're seeing this everywhere too. So in our data, it's coming up very high now. It didn't used to really, but it's coming up everywhere. It's coming up in all the conversations. I had an inbox full of some comments yesterday. I had some Bieber boards that were running around property stuff where claims is quite a significant issue. And consumer duty will affect this too in terms of selection around claims. So claims is becoming front and center. And we used to talk about the claims brand. Now I think that's always been a little bit of a what kind of misnomer, I suppose, in the sense that I think the brand is the brand of the insurer. It's not really you don't have a separate claims brand, and the fact of kind of putting it separately was part of the problem, which is that claims sits too far distant from when the policy is underwritten. As I've said before, I think we're moving more and more into a world where if I buy Acme Insurance's policy, I want to know that this is all going to be servicing me if I have to make a claim, or if there is an incident. And we maybe, as I said, even move away from the word claim because it's part and parcel of the whole service. So I think this is becoming much more important, and it's going to be good to talk to this group this year with that as the backdrop, because often we've sat there feeling at times, I think, and it's been said, is we're somewhere down the pecking order in these organizations.
Yeah.
But claims is becoming more important and somewhat more controversial as well, in a sense, as to is it who's committed to doing claims in a particular way, and I think it's as we know from our data, it's quite variable. Organizations have sort of different philosophies almost on claims, interestingly.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a strange thing, really. But yeah, so I think that is important: reputation and brand and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one theme. Other theme that's come out, I think, is talent. So we have sessions dedicated to kind of the next gen of claims leadership and talent. I think there's kind of 3 areas within that we'll probably focus on. Is like, what do the claims jobs of the future look like, and then what are the type of people that you need in order to fill those roles. I think the second thing then is, well, where are you going to get them from? and how are you going to approach attracting those new skills and capabilities. But also there is a problem, I think, that there is a group of very qualified and knowledgeable people in the industry at the moment that are coming up to or approaching kind of retirement or leaving or that type of thing, and there is a danger that we lose the knowledge that we already have, that kind of technical expertise that we already have in the industry. So I think there is a challenge of, okay, bringing through the next generation, but how do we make sure we retain the knowledge that is already there, that sets the London market apart from perhaps other jurisdictions? So I think that's pretty interesting.
That's a risk, and I think actually what we should be talking about as well is how is succession being managed going forward, how are teams being developed. I think there are really good leaders now in the market who are developing teams with both the technical and the what you might call interpersonal skills, if you like, that are needed in claims to do a good job. And I think also, but that loss of experience is very difficult. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, certainly the teams I deal with, I think it's great to have a mix of older, middle-aged, and younger people in those teams. And I don't think there is some. I think there's too much focus on, oh, we need young people, and that's important, you know, and they're tech savvy and all that stuff. I actually really feel that any industry, you need a mix of that grey hair and experience and stuff, because you're in a constant succession program, really. Not the program Succession, obviously, but the succession of carrying through you know, the experience and the knowledge and all that. But the trouble is that COVID kind of did disrupt that quite a bit, I think, and both actually and in our heads, if you like, psychologically almost. We've kind of struggled a bit since as to what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so that has to be kind of thought through. So I think the leaders at this conference, it would be really great to hear from them what they're doing in their own teams and their own development of talent, because that's, to me, is key, really, is what's the future for what's the future development model, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So third on our list is service, and specifically about meeting client expectations. And we've already touched on this a bit, but we're going to have Julia Graham from Airmic coming along and just putting across some of the frustrations, but also opportunities to change claims operations to deliver better client outcomes. And I think it's just really important to have. We so often in the London market kind of fall back into, how do we get the technical operations to be a bit quicker, or how do we use a bit of technology to drive process efficiency, when actually what we should be focused on, which we've talked a lot about today, is customer or client outcomes. So having a session dedicated to that, I think, and having the customer voice in the room, I think would be really interesting and pretty challenging. I think, you know, Julia doesn't hold back when it comes to challenging the industry. So I'm really hoping for a good discussion there.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good service one. I mean, I think we're moving again more to a sort of measurable outcomes. That's what the regulation is going to request and require. I think in terms of if you use this as a selling point, which the brokers are talking about much more, then again, you need something measurable as a proof point for this. So it's not soft stuff in any way. I don't think it's quite hard, and I don't mean just saying we pay 99% of claims. I mean, it's what is my experience going to be, and then we have to repeat and repeat and repeat that until people start to say, right, okay, this industry works. It's a good product.
Yeah, definitely. Fourth is our old friend and enemy, technology. But I think, you know, we talk about this a lot. You know, it's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology to enable people to do their jobs better, to free up their time to do more value-added tasks, and to give them the opportunity to take new data sources and enhance that client experience. So there's, for me, the conversation certainly shifted. We've talked about this in previous shows, away from just the operational efficiency kind of business case, more into how can we use technology to enable growth, and deliver that customer experience that we've been talking about today.
Yeah. So this is also linked up with talent. So you've got to accept, I guess, that technology in all sorts of forms is going to come in to the industry, and to the claims area of this, if you like. And I believe that there are some technologies that kind of lend themselves to helping out with customer service, maybe lifting the burden of customer service. So things like portals with live chat and things, and they in turn maybe are things that could be done by AI in some form as in future, that could do the simple stuff pretty well. And again, I was talking with some brokers yesterday about this. They were saying we're really sort of interested as to what that means for our business in terms of whether we can do this, but then we will have to redeploy people to do other things. So I think the thinking is moving on a bit into, so if this technology does come in, whether it works or it doesn't work, but if it does come in and we lift the kind of, we get the computer to do the boring stuff and that works for customers, then what else do we do? Where do we add more value? Where do we, and back to talent, what sort of people do we need in the future? Do we need, I see in one of the comments on LinkedIn, talking about soft skills. Do we need more of the soft skills in future, or do we reorganize and restructure the functions so that we have, the data science people, the data people, the technical people, but then more of the kind of front people who are the relationship people, with those interpersonal skills, and even you might even say almost sales skills, who can go to pitches and help insurers win business because their claim service is so good.
Yeah, definitely. And then the final one, which kind of brings it all together, and communications and transparency. I guess it's all the four things kind of brought together. How in the future are we going to, just in an extended value chain that is in the London market, how can we achieve better communications and transparency, again, to deliver those customer outcomes, those client outcomes, and just give, and that kind of feeds into all the other things that we've been talking about. Those are the 4 points. If you don't get that right, then everything else kind of falls over, doesn't it?
I've always thought that communications was the most important piece in claims, because, and while it doesn't always come top of our drivers list, speed does. It seems to me that it is the driver, if you like, of everything else. It's the common factor through everything, which is to be able to, for example, manage expectations, to communicate at FNOL, to when there is, there is harm or damage or whatever, terrible things have happened, to be able to communicate and empathize and all those sorts of things. That is a huge part of the job. And I was going to say that I don't think the industry is going to get away with not having transparency or communicating in future, because I think the regulator's onto it now, the politicians are onto it. That box has been opened. We have to do this and then benefit and see what the opportunity of being more transparent and open is. One area that I've touched on before, I think, is also about conferring responsibility. I often see in various LinkedIn posts and elsewhere, and hear it even in conversations, is that, the policyholders didn't understand the policy, so that's their problem. Well, actually, that's not their problem, I'm afraid. I mean, it's like saying a supermarket or a product saying, well, they didn't understand what the product was and they didn't buy it. Fundamentally, they didn't buy it, right? So that's it, and they're not going to buy it again. So that's damaging the industry if that's happening. So we need to communicate like that. But also in here, I think in insurance in particular, we need to educate a bit more. We need to get those people to share the responsibility a bit, and because inevitably the way that insurance works is you have to share some information to be approved, if you like, or selected for that policy. Now, it's a whole other show or a whole other discussion, but it seems to me that we're not very good at that. You know, the ways we collect that information, the data and everything is not very good. And then because that's not very good, the person or the policyholder doesn't really understand the policy. And that's fraught with difficulty. And I'm hearing, you know, feedback now where some brokers are saying we're having instances where we think the insurer is underwriting at the point of claim. In other words, they're sort of bringing in wordings and things, and you know, post the policy being written that mean you don't get paid out or whatever, or you get paid less. So it's a very important area, I think, the communications area for claims. And as you say, I think we focused a lot on the process and not really thought as much over the last few years about that.
Good. Okay. So that's London Market Claims. Still got a few tickets left if anybody wants to come along. Okie dokie. Right. That's everything. Thanks for that, Ben. So let's wrap things up. Do anything good this weekend? I am organising, as you may remember, the Strawberry Tea Party. So if anybody wants to come down to that in Waterbury and have some lovely Kent strawberries, you can do. It's on the website. Just Google it. You won't be able to find it. It's a secret event. But there you are. I'm organising that.
Brilliant. That sounds really nice, and the weather's going to be nice. I'm house hunting on the Kent coast.
Ooh, nice.
I bet I'm not going to say where, because I don't want everybody rushing down and buying the house that I might want. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm staying down for a day. We might have a little swim in the sea.
Nice.
Potter around, all that.
Good. Yeah, very good. Well, good luck with the house hunting. I haven't done that for a few years, but we shall be back next week. I'll be back at base camp, so with my gadgets and proper microphones and stuff. So I look forward to that. But for now, have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Great weekend, all.